We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Tuesday, and we have the good fortune of having a guest that was on one time before. A young lady by the name of Kristen. She's in California. Pretty accomplished young woman, very smart young woman. That's why I was excited to have her back. Kristen, welcome. And why don't you just remind the folks who you are?
Yeah, thank you so much, Boomer, for having me back. And hello to everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I was a guest the day after the election, and I had not slept. I had been up all night crying, and I did not want to cancel, even though I had not slept, and I was very emotional and raw and vulnerable. I felt it so important that we didn't fall into despair and fear. And I remember saying that day that you need to feel all of the feelings that you are feeling, and then we're going to rise back up. So that's why I'm back, because I feel like I have risen back up from that crushing defeat. And I have done a lot of research, and I want to talk about some things that where we find ourselves right now, which I guess is about a month later. So I live in Ted Lieu's district. So he's a pretty famous congressman. He really challenged Trump in his first administration. And I urge everybody to call your representatives. I have called Ted Lieu's office, and we are, basically what you need to say, and it doesn't matter if your representative is Republican or Democrat, and you can call the congressman and the senators. And we need to start saying and making our voices known that we have to push back against this agenda, that we're not just going to roll over. Okay. So I encourage everyone to do that. I've already called Ted Lieu's office. I think it's really important that we have our voices be heard and let our politicians know that this is not a mandate and we are not rolling over and they're not going to take our rights away. So I was a television producer for many years, and I
Oh, wait,
started to
wait,
work.
wait a minute. Wait
Yeah.
a minute. Many
Yeah.
years. You look 17.
I know I was a television producer for 15 years.
Wow.
And um, I came out to California right when I graduated from college. So, and I started working in production, and I was an actress, and I lived in London for a few years. And I think I'm a zillennial. I am either the youngest Gen Xer or the oldest millennials. So I think they're calling that age group Zennials right now. So
Okay.
that's what I am. And before the election, I was inspired by Old Soul to volunteer and to get the word out for Harris Walls. And so I started doing healing groups because I'm working in this holistic field. We were doing these healing circles and welcoming women who had previously voted for him, who were voting for Kamala. And we were working with them with talking points and discussions with their friends. What could they bring back to their friends? So that's how I ended up on this podcast. And I always want to thank Old Soul because it was her that inspired me to get involved.
Yeah, she inspires a lot of people. The things she does is pretty amazing, and I will sit down with her like a father would talk to a daughter and go, "You want to slow it down a little bit? You can't adopt every damn kid. You can't take on everything and travel all over the country." But much like her family, I don't have much luck with slowing her down, so I just let her
Yeah.
go and try to keep track to make sure she's safe.
There was an episode where she came in hot and you told her to pace herself. She wasn't that she
Yeah.
wasn't going to make it through the whole podcast, and I just cracked up because she was so upset, but I was right there with her. And that's where I found myself. I talked about this the first time I was here, but the things that we heard from these mostly white Republican women in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Michigan was they believed all of it. They literally they had woken up and were coming out of the fog, but what they had believed about him literally, that he is some type of Messiah. And I that's what also made the, not having the election go our way even more crushing, is that I really got to see when I was actually working with women what the lies actually that they get through. That Fox News is highly effective.
Mhm. Well,
And
excuse me. I
bless
think
you.
anytime you tell a lie over and over and over again, um, it does take with some people. I've said that too. You said something right after the election that you were crying and upset, like a lot of
Hmm.
folks were. But then you got your bearings and said, "Fuck it, now we're going to fight." And
Yeah,
that's what I said to you before we went on, is that let's look at what worked for the Republicans. And the Republicans were controlling the narrative, spewing lies, talking
yep,
shit, blaming everything on Biden. So
yep.
I said to the audience, I said, maybe that's what we need to do. Now, not everybody's built for that. Just so happens I can be a loudmouth and get in people's faces. So apparently that's what I'm going to do for the next couple of years at least, expose everything I can and try to make it as noisy as possible. But you've taken some different tacks here. You're looking at ways to combat this, and one of the ways is something we're seeing already. And I'm bringing this up because you have a list of people you want to talk about. First of all, MSNBC loses half their audience within a few weeks after the election. Now, it's not so much that they were fans of Donald Trump, but they were part of this whole thing about stirring the shit and making people not totally informed. And then, of course, Mika and Joe go down and bend the knee for Donald Trump. They lose half their audience. Walmart decides they're going to get rid of DEI hirings, and they're taking a big hit. But it's not just those two that are culpable in this whole situation, correct?
Correct. And we have to do things differently. We didn't do that in 2016. We didn't
No.
start to really hold the mainstream media accountable. I have been on a total media blackout since the election. I already had stopped watching CNN. I refused to watch MSNBC, especially after the Mika and Joe fiasco. And I have been getting my news mostly online, Reuters, BBC. You will actually get way better knowledge of what's happening
Right.
globally if you go to those news sources without all of the gaslighting and propaganda. I cannot handle the gaslighting in my face from watching any mainstream media right now. And one of the reasons also why I wanted to come on your show was because we need voices like yours so badly on this side, especially in your age range as a white man. That was a huge missing piece to, Tim really spoke to that, and he did a great job with that, relating to all different types of men from all walks of life. I saw some great
Right.
videos with him, really sitting down and talking to what these men, what was important to them. But we don't have the podcasts and content creators like they do. We just don't. Um, the Young Turks, no. Midas Touch, no. The Lincoln Project, no. None of those three, in my opinion, are our friends in terms of being, wanting to create a more equitable, society for every American. Um, so I think it's really important that you have this voice and that you have this space, because we have to do things differently this time.
Well, when I was young and I listened to the news well before you were born, and we heard um, Walter Cronkite, Huntley and Brinkley, and all that sort of stuff. You have to understand that news was kind of a loss leader uh, for networks. They had to do it by way of the FCC. There was nothing expected to make any money off of it. It wasn't until they started making money. People think they're going to watch news channels and that they're going to get the information they need and then it's going to be accurate. And unfortunately, that's no longer true. You're not going to get all the news you want. It's going to be slanted a certain way, whether it be left side or right side. So nobody in this country that's watching mainstream media is properly informed. Um, and the Republicans have been a lot better at just spewing bullshit and being louder than everybody else. And then the dumbest among us say that's got to be true. We find out now that it's like 48% of the country, for God's sake. So we do have to be louder. We do have to fight back, whether it be this podcast or some others. You mentioned Midas Touch
Hmm.
and Young Turks.
Hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, Young Turks have just gone off the rails. That Cenk guy or
Totally.
Cenk guy, he's
Hmm.
he's I don't even listen to him because he's way out there. Midas Touch does a good job of getting the info, but you have to understand they have the same issue that mainstream media has. It's make money first and then provide the info. Now, Midas Touch does a pretty good job of those people that have that are in that ilk that are trying to make money. They do the best job, but we need to get the real facts and information out. That's what I've tried to do here. Other folks have tried to do it too. But you're right. The messaging for Democrats has always been bad. And there hasn't been the support, the Joe
Hmm.
Rogans or whoever the fuck
Hmm.
you want to talk about. We've
Hmm.
got to change that going forward.
Absolutely. And we have to understand that the old way of consuming news and the old way that we used to um, vote, all of this, the landscape has completely changed. Okay.
Right.
And it's not going back. Like, we used to, watch Tom Brokaw and Peter Jennings at right at night,
Right.
like at the dinner table. And then we had CNN and MSNBC. And so now we've got it, we're keeping moving on from that. And the thing about Midas Touch also is that I feel like somewhere there are conflicts of interest. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I like the Young Turks. I don't buy that they're really that they really want to see a better country and for everybody. I don't. I agree with you. They're in it for the money. I don't feel like they're they're trustworthy, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, you've been a producer in reality television, Real
Hmm.
Housewives, right?
Hmm.
And I think what's going on in TV news has got to be kind of running parallel to what happens in reality television shows. You strive for that drama, you strive for that conflict. And I'm convinced that the mainstream media doesn't really care what's going on with the country. The idea that Donald Trump got reelected, that's fucking money for them. That
Yeah.
changes everything for them. Besides what it's going to do to the country, the fact that Donald Trump is back in the spotlight means money to mainstream media. And therein lies the problem. They don't care about what's going on in the country or what it's going to do to women. It's about if it bleeds, it leads. And that's one of the things we've got to look out for. We're in a whole different world. The fairness doctrine isn't there anymore because of Ronald Reagan. It's the fucking Wild West in the media, and anybody can do whatever they want, apparently.
Yeah. And um, so the the messaging that you have is very down to earth. And I think that's why it really appeals to people is because you're just laying it out. And you also have, right, the radio background. So you have the delivery down. And what we saw was the crazy cells, right? That's what we saw with reality TV. Being a reality TV star himself, people like to buy into the whole show. There's definitely that aspect that is very um, specific to Americans. A lot of Europeans see that and are just like, what is that over here? The whole thing about being sort of starstruck, right? And old man Joe Biden was boring. Okay. He didn't come out and have crazy press conferences. He wasn't tweeting crazy stuff. And the money that they were making in 2017 from all of what we would call reality TV gold is what they want to make now. And that it's not the same revenue with old man Joe Biden. And that's why I was saying the gaslighting is where I just can't. It's like I turn it on for 5 seconds and just feel like they're totally lying to my face. And so this is what I wanted to really talk about is that we didn't do the first time that we've got to do now. So first time I didn't do the full media blackout. And I also did not boycott companies who had supported him. And I remember hearing about a couple, but it was sort of like it just wasn't that prevalent on my radar. It was more like, how are women going to survive for these next 4 years? Because I knew intuitively he was going to do really awful stuff. I knew he was going to kill people. I remember telling people in 2017, he's going to kill millions of people. I don't know how, but he's going to. And then the pandemic happened.
Right.
So it was just something I could just feel it. His energy was just what he was giving off was just so dark and negative. Um, but him being, this reality star and people buying into that, that's obviously a big problem and it sells. And so that's why they peddle it. And I think part of the companies that back him are writing off that, right? They are backing him because they want part of that money and they don't care about the ethics of the company. I was shocked when I found out how many companies that specifically service women donated large amounts of money to him and not donated to equally, because some companies will donate to both. But I'm talking about donated to his super PACs, donated to the Project 2025 Heritage Foundation, and also made large contributions to him personally. And this list of companies will literally blow your mind. But if we don't address their pocketbooks and make it not profitable for them to do this, they will continue. And
I just want to bring something up. When we
yeah,
saw this election, people were devastated. And I think that's good that they reacted because we've been apathetic for so long. We go, well, whatever. Now they're devastated. And to a certain extent, that's good. I was surprised by the reaction of the people, the immediate reaction of the Walmarts, of the MSNBC fans. To me, that's a good sign because for decades and decades, we were supposed to have the power. It's supposed to be the power of the people, but we gave that away by being apathetic after all these decades. And what we're seeing now seems to be a sign where people are going, fuck it, I want it back. I want my power back. So we know about MSNBC, we know about Walmart, and of course, there's some others now that you're going to bring up here that we maybe didn't know.
yeah, and this list is going to be absolutely shocking. And I can come back in the future and we can talk about companies that gave
Absolutely.
to Democrats because we want to give our money to them, people that donated to Harris Walls. But let's start here with boycotting these companies. Okay, like I said, we did the media blackout the this time around. We didn't do that last time. This time we're going to ignore all of his tweets. Didn't do that last time. And also this time we're going to specifically boycott AutoZone, Ace Hardware, Arby's, Ashley Furniture, Valley Bras, Coors Beer, Buffalo Bills Wild Wings, Carl's Jr., Cadillac, Buick, Haynes, Chevrolet, Cinnabon, Conair, Dairy Queen, Dole, Exxon, Fruit of the Loom, George Foreman Grill, Holly Lobby. They've always been awful. LL Bean, Made in Form, another women's company, Marshalls, which is, ooh, that one hurts. But that's
Yeah.
okay. My Pillow, Napa Auto Parts, the Yankees. Thank God the Dodgers beat them.
Yeah.
Old Dutch Foods, Purdue Farms, Playtex, another that is for women's needs, another company specifically that betrayed women. Public Storage, Shell Oil, I could just go on and on. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Wynn Resorts, 1-800-Flowers, Smuckers, Publix, Grey Goose.
Wow.
That's a vodka. This one really hurts, especially for women my age, Free People. I called Free People this morning and I told them what I thought of them. I called the corporate office. And
What is
like
that?
I said,
What is that?
Free People is a very popular women's clothing brand. And they also were the parent company also owns Urban Outfitters, which is very much a Gen Z brand.
Right.
I would say Free People is like millennials and Gen X women
Okay.
that wear it. Also Gen Z, but they shop at Urban Outfitters as well. So both Free People and Urban Outfitters. Motorola, Papa John's, Walmart, Hershey's, Anthropology, which is also part of the Urban Outfitters and Free People. I don't know if I said this.
Wow.
Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Motorola, Chobani Yogurt, and Dean Foods. Now, this is just
That's
a
pretty
partial
crazy.
list. Yeah,
That's pretty
that's just
crazy
partial.
that many people of noted brands specifically supported Donald Trump. And here's where the problem is they've totally disregarded what I saw as a war on women, as well as a war on this country and good people in this country. They did it for one reason, the same reason why big oil and other wealthy people have supported Donald Trump. They did it for one reason, for the tax break. And they weren't thinking ahead. You know, we're hearing that the oil companies are saying, yeah, we vote for Donald Trump. We're supporting Donald Trump. And then when Donald Trump talks about tariffs, they're going, wait, hold on. Or when they talk about deportation, they're saying, hey, that could affect the economy. They didn't consider that when they supported Donald Trump. All it was about is their bottom line and tax breaks. That's pretty appalling for people who sell stuff to us, especially women. Don't give a shit about the people who are buying their products.
As far as I'm concerned, Boomer, they have betrayed every woman in America.
I agree.
That's how I feel. By giving him money, they said F you to all of us. They also said F you to marginalized people. They said F you to Ukraine. They said F you to the Palestinians. They basically said, we want to be in his good graces so we don't have terrorists. Okay? Because guaranteed there's going to be some sort of something that he can work out that for me, the tariffs was always about him skimming money somewhere. He's going to find a way to get paid. And unfortunately, and this just goes back to a point you were making earlier, I actually looked this up. The average American reads at a sixth grade level. And we talked about this last time I was here when we were like, how did this happen? And I said, it's a failure of the American education system that people don't know how to critically think. And it's really sad to think that, so if the average American reads at a sixth grade level, that means there is a considerable number of Americans who read at a level less than that.
Right.
And these people didn't bother to Google what a tariff was, and now they're on X screaming and crying that tariffs mean they're going to have to pay for it because they didn't bother to do their due diligence to find out what a tariff actually meant. They let some bonehead like Joe Rogan tell them, and God knows what he was saying over there, probably saying it was the greatest thing ever. So it's very upsetting to me that we don't have critical thinking, that people didn't think this through. Like right after the election, one of the most Googled searches was, can I change my vote? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding?
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things after the election. A lot of people that are creators on TikTok and elsewhere got shit about saying Kamala's going to win. I said that too, and I didn't get as much shit as most other people, and I'm not sure why. But when the people have given me shit about it, I said, listen, all the facts, all the data suggest that Kamala was going to win. There was no reason why somebody who had the most enthusiasm behind their presidential campaign wouldn't beat the worst presidential candidate in history. That just doesn't make sense. Then you throw in Roe v. Wade and all the other shit, it only makes sense. But that apparently didn't happen. And I don't know how you feel about this. My anger right now about that election is with Democrats. Republicans, we can assume they're going to vote for Donald Trump no matter what, because they're dumb fucks. But there are Democrats out there that didn't vote for him because of Genocide Joe and because they were making a protest. They didn't apparently understand that how important this was, and they sat on their hands. There were fewer Democrats that voted in 2024 than there was in 2020. And that makes no sense to me. I would have assumed there'd be more than were in 2020. But people just didn't care enough or were trying to protest something. And the fault lies, save for any election fraud, and we'll talk about that in a moment. If it's just pure votes and everything was normal, the Democrats stepped on their own fucking foot.
I agree with you that some blame lies with them, but for me, the blame is with Merrick Garland. So if then we want to say, okay, well, it's Merrick Garland's fault, then it was Joe Biden that should have fired him or should have told him to get busy when he didn't do anything. Now, I understand he walked into a mess. Bill Barr left things an absolute disaster, and Bill Barr is as crooked as the day is long, so I can't even imagine what a mess he walked into. I remember the day that he went over to the DOJ, that everybody was standing outside clapping and crying. And I thought, oh my God, maybe something, someone's going to be held accountable here. And he just dropped the ball. And I don't think
Absolutely.
that it's Jack Smith's fault. I think he did the best he could with what he had. I think Kamala did the best she could with what she had. I don't think becoming an independent or jumping ship helps our cause. We have to make Democrats better. That's why I started off at the beginning saying you need to call your representative. I don't care if they're a Democrat or Republican. You better call them and tell them that Project 2025 and Donald Trump's agenda is not okay and that they better fight back. And unfortunately, Democrats can be weak, weak, weak.
Yeah,
Just
they can. And
and
I'm not suggesting you jump ship on the Democratic Party. That doesn't make any sense. You can't beat the Republicans unless the Democratic Party is strong. But we've got to straighten some motherfuckers out and get them to realize that you can't get everything you want right now. You've got to
yeah,
take it step by step in order to get it. I explained to folks, you may not like Joe Biden, but if you don't vote for Joe Biden, well, if you vote for Joe Biden, you might have a chance to make some changes. If you vote for Donald Trump, you have no fucking chance. It seems like a no brainer to me.
well, the Republicans are better at the long game than we are because I totally agree with you on that. My grandpa used to say when I was little, sometimes you are not voting for someone, you're voting against the other guy, but it is your civic duty to vote. And sometimes, and I told people this, if that's okay if you don't agree with everything Kamala is saying. I don't agree with all of it. I wish she was more progressive. I wish she would go further. However, the alternative is someplace we don't even want to think about.
Yeah.
And so, but he is a con artist and it is a cult. And that's the thing we cannot forget. He has established the biggest cult that the world has ever seen. And that's not according to me, that is according to sociologists. So if you want to go down a rabbit hole, you can Google what all the leading sociologists say about the MAGA movement and the people in it, that they are inspired to be their worst self, that the planet has never seen a cult of 70 million people.
It's not
Now,
just 70 million people because I'm getting emails from Australia, the
right, all
UK,
around the world,
all
and
over
that's
the
why they're
world.
saying the biggest cult the world has ever seen, and he is a master manipulator, and he's learned from the best. VP. So Vladimir Putin is studied by every type of psychologist, sociologist, because the psychological tactics that he employs are so highly effective and have kept him in power. And that psychological warfare, we haven't really realized or really addressed that. Ohan, News Nation, Steve Bannon, all the right wing podcasters, Ben Shapiro, Fox News, all of it, they are they're playing psychological warfare. They are spreading misinformation and disinformation and programming people. When you actually listen to the words they're saying, and remember how Tucker Carlson would present himself, there are focus groups that actually are done in Hollywood to see how effective that messaging is. And they will ask everyone after to see, did they buy into whatever the message was? And there have been crazy focus groups over the years where it's unreal what you can convince people of. Unreal. I won't
It
go into all the
it
different,
is.
what Hollywood does, but they know what they're doing, right? All of the way they are presenting things to speak to this other fringe group of independent people that appear to maybe have voted for him. They appeal to them, cheaper gas rather than voting for your sister, your wife, your girlfriend, your mom. Cheaper gas.
Well, I think people believe that they're independent thinkers and they think for themselves. But having worked in the media, you worked in television. I've spoken in front of crowds of people, and here's what I've learned. When it comes to advertising, advertising works through repetition. If I'm standing in front of a crowd of people as opposed to being in a podcast or on the radio, I can see exactly how people are reacting to what I'm saying, and then I can just take them where they want to go. It's pretty simple, really. It's much easier for me to speak in front of a crowd than it is on a podcast because I don't know what people are thinking. Um, but people are easily swayed, easily sold with someone who's can say the things they want to hear. And that's what Donald Trump does. He just says what people want to hear, and then they justify it being true because Donald Trump said it, whether it's true or not. It doesn't really matter. My contention with Donald Trump, though, he is the epitome of a malignant narcissist, and he's not one of the smarter ones. I have a hard time imagining that he says and does the things he does based on a strategy or a mental plan. Donald Trump, to me, strikes me as somebody who's very emotional and reactionary. And I've dealt with narcissists before. If I say something, they'll say something harder to me. And if I have the audacity to push back, they'll come even harder. That's what they do. That's what bullies do. They just make threats. And if that threat doesn't work, they make a bigger threat. And then they make a bigger threat. What is amazing to me is the vast amount of people that don't understand what he's doing. He's just pulling shit out of his ass and trying to threaten, and people are falling for it. And I'm not just talking about Republicans. I'm talking about Democrats. Every time he says something, they say, "Oh my God, this is going to happen. Matt Gaetz is going to be the AG." I go, "Hold on a second. He's not going to be the AG. This is just the bullshit he's spewing." So he does have this ability to take certain people and make them believe fucking anything.
Well, let's go back to The Apprentice. He was a
Yeah.
failing businessman who had such a shabby boardroom that they had to create one. I have friends that worked on the show. So they had a set that was the boardroom because his was so shabby. And he was actually their last choice to be the
Wow.
business owner. But he was the only one that said yes because none of the others would go for it because they were actually successful and he was broke and he needed the money. So a very brilliant reality TV producer crafted that persona. And I have heard people to this day, I had a neighbor say it right before the election, but he's a brilliant businessman. And I said, what makes you think that? She said, The Apprentice. Yeah. And so that was a carefully crafted image. But I agree with you in terms of narcissists. It's very, very hard to deal with a narcissist. Gray rocking is what psychologists recommend, which means no reaction whatsoever. And that's what we did wrong, including myself, is that I felt like he abused me with every tweet and everything all the way, 2017 and all of that. It was just constant roller coaster that I was allowing him to control my emotions. And I'm not willing to do that this time.
Right.
And I've learned about narcissists. I have unfortunately have been there's narcissists in my family. I have been in a relationship with a narcissist. I have done a lot of healing because they really mess your head up. You are
They
you're
do.
you and then they make you feel you're crazy because of the way they've gaslit and manipulated everything. Then you're the one that appears to have the poor behavior because you're like, what just happened? So I agree with you. He throws at and that's the tool of the narcissist. They want to spew out as much chaos as they can to distract and deflect because that's how they get more power.
And then that's what I was telling folks. Now that we're waiting for him to be inaugurated, and he's saying, "I'm going to put Matt Gaetz up for AG. I'm going to put Kash Patel as the FBI director." And people on the Democratic side, the left side, are freaking out. Oh my God, what happens? And I try to explain to him that's exactly what he wants you to do. He wants you to be afraid. There's two options you have when you're dealing with a narcissist. Like you said, don't say anything. Say, "I don't give a fuck. Do whatever you want." Or deal with him as what he is, a bully, and get in his face and push back if you can do that. So becoming fearful and scared of what he's saying is exactly what he wants you to do and is why he's been successful up to this point. So we've got to change that mindset. We've got to change that strategy, that attack on him if we really want to fucking neutralize him.
We have to realize he is a dolt. He is a dotard. He is an
Yeah.
old, frail old man who is a sinking ship, no matter which way it goes. Okay. His health is terrible. He has a terrible diet. His family clearly does not care about him, or they wouldn't let him be in this position when clearly he's not cognitively there. I have my doubts as to whether or not we're really even seeing him. And this is why I want to tell people we've got to really critically think and not believe anything they put out. If it comes from his camp, question it all. The picture of him on Thanksgiving with Elmo, there were no Thanksgiving decorations anywhere. None. It was the first thing I noticed when they said, here is his Thanksgiving. I went, that's not Thanksgiving. Now we know that he's cheap and that they, do it on the cheapie at Mar-a-Lago, but I guarantee you they have Thanksgiving and holiday decorations. There was no centerpiece, nothing. Then the picture with the head of NATO, that was a picture from like 2017. It was an old one. There also was a picture with him and Mark Zuckerberg, the owner of Facebook. That also was found to be an old picture. This is how ill he is. Okay. This is how ill that they're putting out old stock photos instead of what he really looked like at that rocket launch, which was like death warmed over.
Right.
So he looked terrible. So for me, I think there's something going on with his health that he distracts by, like I said, part of what a narcissist does is distract. Look over here, Kash Patel. Look over here, Matt Gaetz. Right. And so we're not actually looking at tariffs. We're not actually looking at his health. We're not actually looking at the fact that Elmo's in charge. We're not looking at the fact that Vladimir Putin is saying on open television, I rigged the election for him and he owes me. Okay.
I just want
So
to clarify for the folks, when you
yeah,
say Elmo, that is a sarcastic response to Elon, right?
correct. Correct. I call him Elmo. I am so used to speaking in code, Boomer, because on, different like social media platforms, you just like, start speaking in code. So I have like code names for everybody, and I don't want to give him any kind of respect. I don't want to give him any of my energy. I have no respect for him and what he's doing right now. He thinks that he bought himself the presidency, and maybe he did. And that's not
But
okay.
don't you think the time is short with him and Trump, though? I mean, I've said before, you can't take two malignant narcissists and get them to coexist in one spot. Somebody's going to have to be the top dog and somebody's going to have to be the bitch. And I guarantee you at this point, Donald Trump's going to be the top dog because he's the president. Donald Trump, this is the thing about narcissists. They never have close friends. Have you ever noticed that? My
They
father
can't.
never had a close friend. From a distance, they look great. But when they got up close, they saw the cracks. They saw the chasms in their personalities. And they never have close friends. We saw it with Carrie Lake. We've seen it with all these people that have come through with Donald Trump. All the wonderful people, the best people that he's hired have all either quit, been fired, or been indicted. So this is what happens to these people. And Elon will go by the wayside here eventually.
Isn't it interesting that all the narcissists like find their way to each other? I find that fascinating, right? That everybody in his
It is
circle has a
weird.
personality disorder. Okay, I agree with you that narcissists can only get along for a period of time. But Elmo has the money.
Yeah, that's
He's
true. That's true.
okay. And the cognitive abilities of the rapist felon aren't there either. So he's in a much more weakened state than he was in 2016. I agree with you that it's going to be a disaster of epic proportions because he can't get along with anyone. But there is some sort of control that that almost got on him because of the money, and also the connection that we heard about all the phone calls he's having with Putin. There's something the two of them have got on him because, like I said, Putin's saying it on television over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
But
think that it will be a disaster. There will be a revolving door of people that, work there. But I think it's going to be hard to shake Elmo. I think it's going to be hard.
well, it probably will. They'll probably shake Donald Trump before they shake Elmo or Elon.
Yeah.
But don't you see what you think about this? I've said Donald Trump has only had power in the Republican Party because he held value to the Republican Party, whether it be getting votes or saying shit they don't want to say or generating money. But the moment he got elected president, I think he's pretty much cast out his value. Right now, as the president, a lame duck doing stupid, embarrassing shit, he's kind of a liability now. And this is why I personally think that the Republicans go, okay, we got the presidency, we got the House, we got the Senate. Um, we're going to run this thing now. We're going to control it, like the whole tariff thing. Um, some people say he can just do a executive order, and there was a law passed in 23 that he can't unilaterally uh, do tariffs and the whole deportation thing. Don't you think the Republicans are going to go, slow the fuck down here? We're not going to do that because you don't have to get elected again, but we do.
I think that he's just a means to their end. They really want JD Vance, right? Peter
Mm-hmm.
Thiel and Elon, their guy is JD. They got him in as the senator, and he has been groomed, for lack of a better word, by Peter Thiel for a long time.
Well, maybe in more
And
ways than one, knowing
and
Peter Thiel.
exactly. And there's a whole other thing by he's got a boys charity that I all my red flags went up when I saw that. So they want him. And so would I be surprised if they cast the old man aside? No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Because but the only thing is that the voter base isn't there, but I don't think they care about that because once they get in there, they don't plan on there being a free and fair election again. That's the other thing people have to realize. They get in there, and that's what we have to call our representatives, is they already sent Tina Peters in Colorado to go steal the software. She is serving 8 years in prison. Okay, she was just found guilty right before the election. She was a very entitled, very wealthy woman who was instructed by Donald Trump to steal the software of the voting booths in Colorado. And even when she was sentenced, watching the sentencing is one of the great 10 minutes of your life. The judge literally is like, you were a disgrace. You have no remorse. You're going to prison. She literally got up there at sentencing and was like, I did nothing wrong. So they have been working on the elections. And this is the other thing we can talk about. They have been working on undermining our elections since he lost. Okay. And we also cannot forget that in 2016, Reality Winner uncovered the big secret, which is that the Russians had changed 77,000 votes in 3 counties and 3 swing states. And she went to prison for that. She gave that evidence from her highly top secret job to Mother Jones. And people forget about this. In the Mueller report, he goes into detail. They know what deaths in Moscow from the hacking office building, they know the floor and the desk that got into the voting booths. And so this somehow just gets lost in the narrative that there were 77,000 votes changed in 2016 that gave him the Electoral College victory, that he was planning on doing something in 2020. It didn't work out because of COVID and everybody voted by mail. And he already has instructed a woman who is in jail now to steal software. So there's a website that is and this is facts. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. This is all facts, okay? There is a website called smartelections.com, and they are a nonprofit organization that is not conservative nor liberal. They are a watchdog type group, and they conduct their own forensic analysis of our election. And they have concluded that his win is a statistical probability of 1 in 1.2 trillion. And I'm going to explain this and how that breaks down, because this is going to boggle everybody's mind. Okay, so I want to tell everybody about a website and an organization. I guess we could call them like a watchdog group. They're nonpartisan, and it's called smartelections.com. And they have compiled a lot of statistics from the election. They're not done yet. So it's still a work in progress, and they are looking for volunteers to cure ballots. And so if you want to get involved, go to this website. They do good work. Okay, so the first thing I learned from this website is there is a precinct in Philadelphia that all 20,000 people voted for Donald Trump. That's statistically impossible. So the precinct had 20,000 voters, and all 20,000 voted for him. There was not one Kamala vote. Statistically impossible. There are 3,143 counties in America. And typically, just for president, let's not do the down ballot, just the president, it's about half. And Joe Biden won a little more than half of the counties in the country, okay? Donald Trump just won 3,000 counties out of 3,143. The
That seems
statistical
ridiculous.
probability of that is 1 and 1.2 trillion. Okay.
That's pretty
Zero
substantial.
counties, zero counties went from blue to red. Zero. Okay. Excuse me. Zero counties went from red to blue. No counties flipped to blue. Over 1,000 counties flipped from blue to red. All right. So I want to make sure I said that right because I mixed up. Okay. No counties, not one out of 3,143 flipped from red to blue. Zero.
Wow.
Okay. That is a statistical improbability. And it is, they are saying that that means that this was predetermined and pre-selected by software in the voting booths. And what did I just tell you about Tina Peters, who is currently in prison in Colorado for stealing the voting software out of the voting booths in Colorado?
I just want to say something, Kristen, because I've talked about this before, and I don't know nearly as much about it as you do. After the election, we had a lot of Democrats come out and say, "Oh, there's some funny stuff. There's Starlink. There's this. There's that. The other thing." And I had people calling me and say, "Do you want to come on this Zoom? We've got some scientists that will say how this all works out." And my immediate response to that was, I don't want to be like the Trumplafucks saying it's a hoax and doing all that shit. Show me some evidence. And even if there is evidence, show me that the Democrats and the DOJ is going to fucking do anything about it. Because
Well,
we could
that's,
scream about what's going on. Even if it's
yeah.
true, if they aren't willing to do anything, it's all just a waste.
I totally agree. And that's why I'm saying this. And that's why I'm bringing facts and directing everyone towards a website because we don't want to be like them. But that's part of the psychological warfare that they called rigged for so long that now we're afraid to say anything. And so I put it in the category of that was the way that I would have acted during the 2016, and I'm going to do things differently now. These numbers are saying something here. This to me has to be investigated. Whether or not it will be, we don't know. Okay, there are also bullet ballots. And so what a bullet ballot is when someone only votes the top of the ticket and leaves the rest blank. Okay.
Right.
So they only vote for the president. Typically, there's like 1% to 2% bullet ballots. They're very low. Okay. And yes, they happen in all states. But in North Carolina, in one precinct, the number of bullet ballots exceeded the number of registered voters in that county. Okay. So the thing that I noticed going through all of this information is that it was very swing state oriented, obviously. And the other thing that's really interesting is there is a website that is gambling called Polymarket. And you
Right.
can't use it in America, but overseas you can make a bet. And there was someone in France that had put like a $50 million bet on Donald Trump winning. And the exact map that Polymarket had the week before the election is the map that they had on election night. And the CEO of Polymarket was raided by
Right.
the FBI. And so in Europe, um, the NATO ambassador from Germany came out the other day and he is considering triggering an Article 5. And I saw, and that's why I was telling people to go to Reuters and BBC because you will not see any of this on the news over here. Nothing. They will not talk about this. He said that Russia is engaging in a hybrid warfare and that they have stolen over 200 elections. And he started calling them out. And if he triggers Article 5, this is a very big deal with NATO. Okay.
Well, it's where Article 5 brings all the NATO members together to fight against the one person committing
Yes, and
the
we know who
crime, as it
that
were.
is.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
and
know
we
who
know who
that
that
is.
is. And so on German TV, they were saying that Germany's national security is of very much in peril if he gets inaugurated. On the other side of Ukraine is Poland, and on the other side of Poland is Germany. And if Trump gives Vladimir Putin Ukraine, he will immediately go into Poland, and we have a very serious issue on our hands with our European allies. So there is a great interest from what I could see. This is just what and it was like when you step out of the mainstream American media and you stop that gaslighting, it was like I could see things more clearly, right? And he never mentioned Donald Trump's name, but it was certainly an undercurrent of, and he never specifically said Vladimir Putin had done anything to the American election. He did not say that. But right now in Lithuania, Romania, Moldova, Vladimir Putin messed with all of their elections, and they have been protesting and trying to figure out the real ballots and how to proceed. So it's also going on in Eastern Europe right next to Ukraine. So NATO and what we're seeing here with the smartelections.com, I think that we just need to see how this plays out over the next couple of weeks because they're going to go have their NATO meetings this week. And then we can see if the Article 5 is triggered. We also can see what Smart Elections does with this information, which is, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's why I'm asking you to please call your representatives, call your congressmen, and call your senators and tell them that we cannot allow Donald Trump to be a national security risk and that they need to fight back and you don't have to say anything about election fraud. Don't say anything like that. We just need them to know that we are not going to allow him to have genocide in Ukraine, that we're going to stand up for that because that is a real possibility if he lets Putin keep on going. This is a very, very serious situation.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk are already a security risk by their constant communications in private with Vladimir Putin. That shouldn't be happening. And when I first said what I said about all these conspiracy theories, whether they're conspiracy theories or not, they're saying you don't think that Donald Trump, the Republicans, and Russia did something funny with the election? I go, no, anytime Donald Trump's involved, you can expect there's some fucked up shit. I'd still like to know about the assassination attempt. It seemed obvious that it was legit, but there's a lot of questions about it just by virtue of Donald Trump being involved. Um,
I don't
After the
think that
election,
we
you were
shouldn't question. We should question, Mike. We should.
well, absolutely we should question, but we need some support from Democrats and the DOJ and the authorities in doing this. Jamie Raskin brought up the whole idea of the 14th Amendment. Um, and and Donald Trump has already given comfort to those insurrectionists. And if he becomes president and he uh, pardons them, then he breaks the very law that the 14th Amendment suggests in there, giving comfort to insurrectionists or however they word it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my question is after the election, we heard this, the 14th Amendment, the messing with the election and the fraud and the Russians and all this stuff. But we haven't heard a word from the Democrats. They haven't said anything about that. Is that because they're just going along to get along like they usually do? Or is there something secretly going to happen in the next couple of weeks? I don't know. It's impossible to, I can't count on the DOJ because they failed us miserably. The Democrats tend to be weak, as you said. So even if there is something there, can we count on the people that actually can put this in motion of doing something?
If we base that answer on their previous behavior, the answer is no, we cannot trust them. They have
Right.
failed us miserably. So what I'm thinking is, will it be NATO? Is it not going to be the weak Democrats that speak up, but is it going to be the German ambassador to NATO that drops the bomb and says they rigged the US election? Is it NATO?
Well, and we know that
That's what I'm saying. Is it going to be because Germany and France and all those countries right around the other side of Poland, they have an imminent threat happening and they need to do something. It might not be, or like I said, if we count on our DOJ, they have failed us miserably. If we count on Democrats, they unfortunately, and I don't want to put Kamala in that. She did the best she could with the
she
given
did.
situation. I don't blame her. I don't like when people blame her. She did the best she could. So did Tim. Um, but the energy and what I got from the Europeans is very different than what we're getting over here.
Hmm.
So the Russians cut those cable lines right in the up in the Scandinavian Norwegian area, right? And they dredged these anchors, right, to purposefully cut those cable lines. And the Dutch have come out and this was also part of what they were talking about with NATO that needs to be addressed is they boarded the ships. They might have seized the ship as well. And they are claiming that Vladimir Putin did this on purpose and that it's part of the hybrid warfare. So there seems to be more of a sense of urgency coming from over there than here. And again, this is why I'm saying we have to call our representatives. They are useless unless we call them and put and literally light the fire under them. When they wanted to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, I called John McCain. I don't even know how many times. And what did he do? Thumbs down. So it works. It does work. It doesn't work all the
Does.
time. I made a lot of phone calls with Kavanaugh. That didn't work, but that's what I'm saying. We have to call our representatives and whatever issue is important to you, bring that issue up.
Well, I've said that to the people, and this may or may not be hopeful for folks, but everybody said after the election, what can we do? And the fact of the matter is, if the Republicans have the control in the House and the Senate, there's only really one thing we can do is try to get the power back to the people where it should be, where it was at one point till we gave it away. But the only tool we have, the only power we have is public opinion. That's by making noise. Because when a lot of people say, this sucks, we don't want this, that's the only time politicians listen because it's going to affect their bottom line. It's going to affect their elections. But that's my point. We as Democrats or the left side have to get louder and in people's faces and calling representatives and being more proactive about fighting this fight, far more proactive than we've been up to this point. I mean, you think that we have 2 years for this campaign. Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felony charges. He was found liable of rape in a civil case. He's done all these horrific things. There's no reason in the world that everybody doesn't know about this, that everybody isn't screaming about this, and the fact that he got elected, whether it was some kind of sketchy shit by the Russians and the Republicans, or just people too dumb to fucking get it. There's something going wrong. There's a disconnect with what's right in this country and the vast majority of the people who would want it to be right. And the only thing I can think of for us, you and I sitting here, is public opinion. If we can change public opinion to get the majority of people to understand this guy's a fucking criminal and these are some sketchy situations, that's really the only option we have. And I think that's what you're suggesting by making the calls and doing whatever.
Yeah, we have to hit them in the pocketbook too, right? We have to hit
Yeah.
them where it hurts financially by not shopping at their stores and doing what I did this morning and calling Free People Corporate and telling them that I have thousands of dollars worth of their clothes. I have been a loyal customer since I was in college, and I will never shop with you again. And shame on you for being a women's company and giving him money. You have betrayed every woman in this country. I said, shame on you. I was I did tell the lady that answered is I asked her if it was being recorded. I asked her if she could pass the message along. She said yes. And I told her this is not you personally, right? Because we don't want to attack anybody like
Doesn't do
that,
any good.
right?
No.
Yeah. So I told her it's not you personally. This is how I feel about free company, and I want to tell them. And I also told them I'm going to go on a podcast today and I'm going to call you out. And I said, I'm not going to stop. I said, because you have betrayed us. We need to stand up And we are not going to stop anthropology, urban outfitters, and free people. You're done. You're done. So what we can also do over the next couple of years is put these companies literally out of business. We have to literally have to hit them so hard in the pocketbook that it hurts, that they know that supporting that isn't worth it, right? There have been some companies over the years that have also made changes, just like how, calling John McCain worked, right? So calling a Republican, I kept calling and calling. I said, you cannot take the Affordable Care Act away from people. How could you even think about doing that? And it worked. So calling and being loud does work. That was where I disagree with Michelle Obama. Remember when she said, when they go low, we go high? I always thought it should be, when they go low, we get loud, right?
Right.
And so, like I said, calling the representatives, calling the companies that you shopped at that supported Trump and telling them you're not going to shop with them anymore, and doing the total media blackout, taking care of yourself. I think it's really important that we remember that just because he might be president, because he's not president yet, we don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks with Article 5. That could be a game changer. Um, that doesn't stop us from living our best life. It doesn't.
No, hell no.
It doesn't stop me from being happy. It doesn't stop you from being happy. The atrocities have not started yet. It's only just a circus right now. And I don't want to give my attention to the circus until we know that this is actually what's happening. So we don't want to freak out in advance. We don't want to capitulate in advance. And we don't want to let a narcissist steal our joy. That's what they want. That's their whole purpose. They want to steal your joy. Do you want to give them that power? I know I don't. I don't.
Every narcissist I've ever known, it's never ended well for them. The end game is not going to be good for Donald Trump and those people that follow him. I wanted to bring up something too. You were talking about the Article 5 and NATO and all this stuff. And I think people have to understand why it is so important to Europe, maybe as important as what we're going through here. The Republicans and Donald Trump want to give Vladimir Putin carte blanche to take over Ukraine. And the problem with that is Vladimir Putin doesn't stop there. Then he maybe goes to Poland or some other country. The problem is if we let him take Ukraine and then he steps on the toes of Poland or whoever else, that brings NATO in. And that means every country in NATO is going to start fighting against Russia and pushing back against Russia. So we're that much closer to a World War III. That's the point of trying to keep them out of Ukraine, stop them from doing the bullshit they're doing. I know there are people here in America that say we should just stay out of it. Well, we can't stay out of it. And the people in Europe, they have the most imminent danger. That's why they're going to step up and do the things they say they're going to do. You talked about Article 5. I know the German chancellor went to talk to Zelensky in Ukraine too. He isn't doing that to play golf. There's some shit going on there.
Yeah, Mike, you just said it so eloquently. This is where you were talking about we have to think about the long game. This is why you have to vote for Joe Biden, because the long game is our whole world security. And we cannot abandon Europe. And that's not even an option. I don't know why people don't understand that. We can never abandon Germany, Poland, of Ukraine. What we're dealing with Vladimir Putin is literally a maniacal, evil, megalomaniac, narcissist dictator. Like I said, he is studied by all kinds of Fiona Hill, who actually did work for the Trump administration and testified during the impeachment trial about the phone call with Zelensky. She's an expert on Putin. He plays everybody. It's to him, it's fun. He twists everybody up into his little pretzel. And I even know a woman who was a journalist in Australia, and her friend had spoken out about him. He invited her friend to have lunch on her birthday, and he murdered her. Yes. So people have to understand what we're dealing with him. That's just one story of literally dozens and dozens of what we're dealing with. And like I said, it might be more that NATO has to step up, and they let it drag on in Ukraine too long, right? And I don't know if you've also seen the North Korean soldiers. There was like 500 of them, like just completely wiped out. They sent them first. There's a whole bunch of them in hospital. So obviously they don't have the means or resources, you know, to keep things going when they're bringing in North Korean soldiers. I mean, NATO, like I said, I just feel like NATO is going to be making moves here in the next couple of weeks. It just is in the process right now.
I think you're probably right. I think people are in Europe are terrified at the prospect of Donald Trump getting in there and letting letting Vladimir Putin run roughshod. What did you think about Joe Biden giving them long range missiles and then saying, "Go ahead, shoot it in Russia"? I think I think he's just trying to give them as much edge as he can before he's out of there.
That's exactly perfectly said. He was trying to give him as much of an advantage that he could before he goes. And I sort of wish he had done that earlier.
Yeah,
It's dragged on. And I'm not surprised he pardoned Hunter. And I'm so glad he pardoned Hunter. And I hope he pardons so many other people. I hope this is just the beginning. I know they like boo-hooed that Hunter was pardoned. Well, Trump pardoned Jared Kushner's father, who is like a criminal. He did like really weird stuff to his own family that ended him in jail with extra charges for witness tampering.
not to mention Manafort, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, drug traffickers, sex traffickers. He pardoned a lot of people, and I'm even hearing left side media, alleged left side media. Oh, I can't believe he did it. He promised he wouldn't do that. Well, fuck you. Donald Trump promised a lot of stuff, and you're not saying shit about that. I'll tell you why he pardoned uh, uh, Hunter Biden, and he gave him a sweeping pardon, meaning anything over that 10-year period. He could have just pardoned him for the crimes that he was convicted of, but he knows what Donald Trump and the Republicans have said. They're going to go after their political rivals. So if he pardons him of just those 2 or 3 crimes, they're going to come over and run him through the rigor for the next 4 years too. So Joe, as a good father, said, "Fuck that. This is unjust in the first place. So we're just going to pardon him completely across the board." And that is probably pissing off Donald Trump. But I think that's the kind of stuff we need to do now. Like you said, Michelle Obama said, "When they go low, we go high." You say, "Get louder." I say, "Get in the fucking mud and play the same game. Get loud, get in their face, and play the games that they played." He should also come out and he should pardon Jack Smith and anybody
Totally.
else in line, just so that take that away from him. And if people don't like it, Joe's 82 years old and he can't run for office again. Who gives a fuck? Plus, he's got immunity.
Old man Joe Biden has been a politician for 40 years and never lost an election until now. Well, I mean, technically,
Right.
he didn't lose, he stepped down. People sometimes just forget that he is a real politician, okay? And I hope he even pardons like Kamala and Tim. I hope he pardons everyone to take all of that away from him, all of that power. I think that if Hunter would have ended up in any kind of prison, if he hadn't have given him that sweeping pardon, God knows if Hunter would have ever gotten out. It would have been the MAGAs would have destroyed him in a prison. Um, Little Wayne gave it away. The other issue that I don't want to hear from MAGAs is that Jared Kushner sold pardons. Little Wayne is a rapper that was in federal prison on gun charges and maybe drugs too. And when Little Wayne got out, it only took him a few minutes to get on his social media and say that he bought his part for a couple million
Right.
dollars. Yeah.
Right.
So I don't want to hear it from them. Okay. They sold pardons and pardoned like real criminals. I don't want to hear it.
Well, and like I said, as far as going higher, that's just not in my not in my ability. I understand when you're fighting a bully, you have to give them what they understand, and sometimes you have to slap the taste out of the mouth of somebody who's a bully. That's the only way you can push them back. That's the only thing they can understand. And I hope against hope that depending on how this all goes, that the Democrats get a little tougher. I mean, I try to look at the bright side of things. And when we lost on November 5th, I thought, okay, I'm going to pull back and I won't have to get so ranty about it. And then I said, fuck, now I got to keep going for 4 years doing the same shit I've been doing for the last 4 years. But then I thought, actually, all I can do is sit back, take pot shots at this motherfucker, and talk about the failures and talk about the injustices and talk about the criminality and just make fun of these people. And then I thought that might be kind of fun. I might like that. That will be enjoyable, unless he tries to put me in jail. But fuck him. Good luck with that.
I
Oh gosh, hold on. Hold on. I just lost my headset. Okay, I lost
So
my
people know I
headset.
didn't piss you off. You just
no, no, I lost my headset. And sometimes when it clicks off, it will actually cut off on the Zoom call. So I didn't want that to happen. Sorry about that, folks.
okay.
I'm back.
No problem. No problem.
All right, remind me where we were. I was just going to make a point about what you said, but I lost my train of thought.
Well, I was just talking about,
Oh, yeah.
for
I
me, I
think
just have to sit back and take pot shots.
I think one thing that we can do, because the Democrats have, failed us so many times, is that we need to say goodbye to the old guard of Democrats. That's the point I wanted to make.
I agree.
We got to
I
say
agree.
goodbye to Chuck Schumer. We got to say goodbye to Nancy Pelosi. We got to say goodbye, and we got to bring in Jasmine Crockett. We got to bring in the young. And I like Hakeem Jeffries. I wish he would stop posting scripture on Twitter. I'm actually going to call his office and tell him to knock it off, because Marco Rubio does that, and like really creepy MAGAs do it. And he needs to be the speaker or minority leader for all the people. And he keeps posting Bible scriptures. I just don't like that. I'm going to tell him to knock it off.
Here's the thing with Hakeem Jeffries. I like Hakeem Jeffries. I think he's a good politician. I think he's a tough politician, but I think he's somewhere between the old guard and the new guard, and he needs to pick a side. And the old guard is going away with any luck at all. He needs see that's where Joe Biden fell down too a little bit. Joe Biden is a consummate politician, probably the smartest politician in all of Washington D.C. right now, based on his experience and what he does. But we're in a new world now. This is a new fucking game. You can't come play football in the NFL today with the leather helmets and the newspapers for shoulder pads. You got to play in this game, and you got to play by these rules, and you got to be tough enough to do it. Jasmine Crockett's, the AOC, some of these people, Eric Swalwell, they know how to play the game the way it's being played now. And we do have to separate from that old guard. And Hakeem's got to pick a side. And like you say, quoting scriptures is not the way to do it right now.
No, and that's why, like I said, I encourage everyone to call him and tell him to knock it off. If you agree with me, and you don't have to, it's okay if you disagree. I was raised a Christian. I love God. I have no problem with people's religion, but right now, that's not what we need. That's not. We need someone who's going to get out there and say, we are going to fight every single agenda that they have, and we are going to put up a good fight for you all, and and we're not going to let up. And that's what we want to hear from him. And so we need to call him and tell him, Hakeem, we need you to step up and be a fighter and stop with this spreading whatever Christian thing you think you're doing. We're not interested.
Well, and trying to play old school politician isn't going to work. Let's look at what won the election. Some loudmouth fucking ranting piece of shit. So if that's what people are resonating with, maybe we have to accommodate that a little bit. It's more of a tabloid than a news situation. The likes of Jasmine Crockett, AOC, or whoever else is out there that's talking that way, that's what it's going to take to reach the people, apparently. Now, they don't have to be as bad as Donald Trump. They can be accurate, they can be truthful, but you got to be strong. That's apparently what people in this country are concerned about, strength. So let's show some strength.
Yeah, and I think we're really lacking. I was trying to think of other people. Okay, we have like Jared Moskowitz, maybe he was on a committee
He's
and he
good.
was putting up a good fight against that Jim Jordan scumbag. And Dan Goldman, maybe is his name.
Dan Goldman's
He's
good. He's
another
former
one.
prosecutor.
And he really also was. I think they might be on the same committee with that Jim Jordan is the head of that committee.
Right.
And I love it that Jasmine Crockett has stepped into her power. I just think she is so smart and so fabulous. But that's not enough. And they have already tainted a sort of tarnished Eric Swalwell, which makes me really upset. Is they sort of pinned this. He had a woman who did infiltrate his camp, and they reported her, and everything was cleared. They did the right thing when they found out what she was up to, but they've made it into that he had an affair with her. They've made it into something really salacious. And so if you go to his like Twitter, like when he tweet or his X or whatever, the the threads underneath will just constantly be referring to that salacious gossip. They really are wanting to have that be associated with his name in Google searches and, and really tie him to that. And I don't like that they're able to do that, but then they have such poor behavior and nothing really sticks to them. It's such a weird double standard.
Well, we got to keep pushing it, though. I mean, like I say, somebody's got to be pushing this out constantly about their failures or their salacious bullshit. The thing I found that was interesting after the election. Now, prior to the election, I did some lives on TikTok, and I would get Trumplefucks out, and I have a couple moderators. We could keep them at bay, and I'd get through an hour, hour and a half. Since the election, I've done 2 lives, and the Trumplefucks are coming out even harder, even stronger. And I say to him, look, you won. Why do you want to fight with me? You won. So why don't you go do something and accomplish something? But they don't know how to govern. They don't know how to do anything. All they want to do is fight. And now they feel like they're stronger. So they come fight with me. And it just tells me that these people aren't about productivity. They aren't about doing anything. They just want to fight. That's all they know how to do. Thankfully, I don't mind fighting with them from time to time, but it just seems weird. It seems to tell us what we can expect for the next 2 years before the midterms. A lot more of what we got the last 2 years accomplishing nothing because these people are fucking incompetent. All they know how to do is fight. So we'll fight with them and keep them busy and nothing will get done.
They're trolls. They're literally
They are
internet
trolls.
and they are miserable. And you would think that them now, don't get me wrong, they are gloating, but their big objective, their main thing is to own the libs, right? That's their reason for living. So no, they don't care about governing or making a better world for all Americans. They don't care about the American dream available to everybody. They don't care about women's rights. They don't care about any of that. They care about owning the libs. And I thought that they would be a lot happier on Twitter, and they're not. They're
No,
still miserable. They're absolutely still miserable. So that goes back to the cult mentality. And what the sociologists explain is in this particular cult, you are rewarded for being your worst self. So if you're your worst self, you're not going to be happy. You're not. You're not going to be any of that. You're still going to be miserable troll.
it's funny. I've talked about this before. I've had a couple Trumplefucks on the show. One of them was a younger guy than me. I've known him for a long time because he was tied to a radio station as a student when I was back there. And he's a big Trumplefuck. He works at Walmart, of course. He's not the sharpest guy in the world. He went through the training, never could get a job in real radio. So now he's doing whatever he's doing. And he has this podcast, which is a Trumplefuck podcast. And I invited him on the show one time, and he was really raring to go. He thought he would really be able to take me to task. Well, when it was over, he's he's dealing with lies. He's not very good. He's not very articulate. So it didn't go well for him, as you might guess. And I didn't hear from him for a long time. Well, after this election, he says, "Hey, why don't you come on my show?" I go, "Okay, probably won't go as well. Be careful what you ask for." "Oh, it's going to be like that, huh?" I go, "Like what?" He says, "Well, I just want to talk about the results of this landslide of Donald Trump." And I said, "Well, first of all, Brian, here's the fucking deal. It wasn't a landslide. You're believing bullshit again. And here's the thing. I got nothing to lose now. You think I was mean last time? I'm going to have fucking fun and be really mean this time." He goes, "Well, okay." I'll guarantee you I'll never end up on his show because the last time I was on his show, we had technical difficulties within the first 5 minutes and we never got back to it. But these people think that we're going to react by going, oh my God, you beat us. You were right. You were right. No, I'm going to push back harder on these motherfuckers.
Yeah. And then the ones that want to make nice, I saw that on social media too. Like, oh, can't we all get along? No, you just voted for women to die of a miscarriage. No, you just heard all about Project 2025 and you voted for it anyway. You literally saw a man simulate a sexual act right before the election to a microphone and thought that he would make a good leader of the free world. No, I don't want to make nice with you. Something's wrong with you. And I, I I feel like everybody can have redemption. So I welcome people who have had the epiphany and want to come this way. Absolutely, you're welcome, because there are people that come out of the fog, but they're so deeply entrenched in the fog, like what you were talking about with the host, that he can't even have a rational conversation. They don't have a
Yeah.
comeback. And they also don't have facts. I just brought facts, right? Numbers, facts, and I gave references to where you can go to see these facts, right? They don't operate like that. They don't accept facts. They have the severe cognitive dissonance, right? They believe what they want to believe, what Fox News is telling them, which is a complete dystopian reality, basically.
What do you think is going to happen with media? I mean, media to me is the biggest culprit of Donald Trump becoming president, both left side and right side. I think they are solely responsible for the divisiveness in this country, because no matter what you watch, you're getting a different story. So if I'm talking to Joe Trumplafuck and I say, what about this? And they go, I've never heard that. They're not lying. They haven't heard about it. So if we can't get all the same information to everybody, there's no way we can be anything but divided. You hear what you hear at Fox and you think that's the gospel. You hear what you hear at MSNBC, you think that's the gospel, and never the twain shall meet. It's just not possible. That's why we're divided.
We're going to have a reinvention of the media. I don't know what it's going to look like on the other side.
It looks like
And
us, is what it
yeah,
looks like.
it looks like, yeah. And we have to reinvent media, and we have to reinvent taking the time to say we have integrity. And yes, we are presenting our opinion, but we also have facts. And we can just, that's all we have, is to say that we are operating in integrity, and here are the facts. You can make up your own mind. I can encourage people to call their Congress people, but it's up to them to actually do it. I think also we're going to have another influx of how AI is going to affect it, and that will be another that will be something that will change things. We have to have everything marked as false or misinformation by AI immediately, because we can't fact check them so quickly in real time. They're lying so fast and have lie after lie
That's
after lie
true.
come out of their mouth, that we need AI to catch up with that so that it can automatically label this as false. Because it, like I said, we in real time, and with just the journalists like that were on the news, they failed miserably during the debates and even after to accurately fact check. It has to be AI, I think.
Yeah. A lot of people are afraid of AI, that it's going to do all these horrible things. But they were also afraid of television. They were afraid of the internet. And, there are some negative things that come from all those things, but there are some positive too. And I think people get too worked up about what might be. It's even like with Donald Trump. And I've said this before, everybody sees this imminent destruction of the world because Donald Trump will become president. People have to remember back in 2017 when he took office through 2021, he made a lot of fucking claims. He was talking about deporting people then. He deported fewer people than Barack Obama. He talked about tariffs. The tariff happened only with the farmers that I know of, and some China, but we know what happened to the farmers. It failed miserably. You would think you'd learn a lesson. But Donald Trump, at his core, is incompetent. He's not very bright. He doesn't like to do the work. He likes everybody else to do the work. And the people he's bringing on are also incompetent. So it's conceivable that we just get caught in the muck for a period of time. Not that he won't do some fucked up shit, but as much stuff as he's talking about isn't likely to happen.
I agree with you. They build the wall? No. Did they do half of the things he said they were going to do? How many times did he said he was going to repeal the Affordable Care Act? I mean, yes, he's going to make
Infrastructure.
all of it. None of it happened. They passed one bill, I think, wasn't it just the
Tax
uh
credit, yeah.
for rich people? Yeah, they passed one bill and they all clapped, and I remember when they all, congratulated themselves. I just wanted to vomit. Just patriarchal, just ugh. Um, so they'll do that again, whatever they can pass to help their cronies. Um, he's also going to do unfathomable things. It's going to be highly offensive, but it's up to us, like you said, to fight back when appropriate and not to cower, and to, like I said, we don't allow narcissists to take our power. That's what they want. We're not going to do that this time. We have to decide we're not going to do that. Um, I think it will be absolutely awful. And I think that the backlash this time will be totally different. And I think media in the next couple of years will look totally different. Like I said, I think there will be the AI. I think that we will be on social media platforms. Blue Sky is where I'm going to migrate from Twitter, and so there might be other like blue skies and things that pop up, right? So TikTok sort of came out of nowhere and hit it. So there might
Right.
be other platforms that creators can, create commentary. But yeah, I think that it's going to really change over the next couple of years. And like I said, I'm not exactly sure what it will look like because we've got to incorporate that AI for the misinformation.
Absolutely. Well, Kristen, I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate it immensely. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You're the epitome of what I always say. The way this show gets to be good is I get people smarter than me and I put them on next to me, and then I look good in the process. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I've learned so much from you, and I just am so grateful for what you do and for your voice. And thank you so much to your audience. I'm just sending everybody so much love. Thank you for having me.
And I will say this every time, the time you've been on before, people loved it and want you on more. So don't be such a stranger. Come on more frequently. I got, Will calls me every week, and I'm happy to have him on because he's very smart. But you're smart too, and you bring a different perspective. So anytime you want to come on, just say, let's do this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I also have learned a lot from Will. He is really smart, and we have that LA connection. So I really resonate with him. And like I said, what I will bring back is we want to support Democratic businesses. So we're starting here with the list of the businesses we're going to boycott, and then we can move to the businesses that we want to support.
That sounds great. Again, thank you very much for coming on. Those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time. Um, I hope you have a great day. And of course, we'll talk to you tomorrow. And I think Eric is going to be on tomorrow. So that will be good. So have a great day. We'll talk to you again.